Okay, welcome. This week we're reading chapter 3, and we will start with guided meditation as usual. So just take a moment to allow the body to get comfortable. And allow the mind to also find a comfortable position. And as you arrive into this moment, just notice, what does it feel like to be you if you don't refer to memory or to any mental concepts? Without referring to memory or mental concepts, what does it feel like to be you? Now I invite you to notice and to check, without remembering anything about you, are you still there? So just consciously notice the you when you aren't referring to anything about you, any memory. Are you still there? Is there still a you without remembering anything about you? And then that sense of beingness that's still there, we'll just stay with that for another minute. Just stay with the sense of beingness as best you can. Just stay with that. And now take your time. I just open it up for if there's anything to share about what you notice, about your experience before we get into the reading. There's something I can share. I really love that question of, without remembering anything about you, are you still there? For me, that points to just such a revelation, like that. Like so much of my life, it has seemed as though, like, it seems as though I'm a concept, or I'm the thinker. And so if there's not any thinking, there isn't a me, which is confusing. Like, well, that's not all I am. But still, to the mind, it seems as though that's all I am, like, and it's such a revelation to me to, like, oh, if I'm not referring to anything about me, there's still a me. Wow. Wow. And then what I am isn't dependent on thought. Wow. Like, that's huge for me.
I like that.
I
Yeah.
got the imagery of being a little, like turning into a little dot kind of in the center of my chest, and then that, like, the body faded away, and I guess the thought process that went on kind of relates to Michael Newton's like life between lives, and then going into like the soul realm without a body, like who am I there, and then going all the way back to like the first spark off of creator. And when you're just that baby spark, you're still the awareness, but you have no idea who you are really until, higher light beings and experiences start happening. So I just went back to that like very first coming off the spark, like who was that there before everything. And it's like, I guess there's some type of pure awareness there, but that was kind of my thought process.
Wow. Well, should we start reading chapter 3? Cool. So anybody want to read the first section, and then we'll pause for a moment and be with that before we discuss?
I'll give it a try from this, the copy that I have.
Yeah. Great.
But I'll see if I'm having trouble reading it on here. I'll let somebody else do it. But this was so exciting to me. Okay, and in this copy that I have, will I have the stars that will tell me when to stop?
Yes.
Is that how I know? Okay.
Yep.
All right. We refer to ourself throughout our life as I. I am 24, 45, or 68 years old. I am 5'4" or 6'2". I am French or English. I am healthy or sick. I am rich or poor. I am lonely or unhappy. I am tired or cold. I am single or married. I'm a mother or a father. I am a doctor or an artist. I am walking down the street. I am reading a book, and so on. In each of these statements, we refer to our essential self, I, or I am, which is consistently present throughout all experience and which is qualified by various changing feelings, states, conditions, activities, or relationships. I am not always 24, 45, or 68 years old, but I always am. I am not always 5'4" or 6'2", but I always am. I am not always lonely, unhappy, tired, or cold, but I always am. I am not always single or in a relationship, but I always am. I am not always walking down the street or reading a book, but I always am. I am not always any of these things in particular, but I always am. All feelings, states, conditions, activities, or relationships are added to me and then removed from me. They are not part of what I essentially am. They are not part of my essential being. Our essential self or being shines in each of us as the sense of being myself, the feeling of being, or the pure knowledge I am. This knowledge is described as pure because before becoming qualified by the content of experience, it is devoid of any objective quality. It is transparent, empty, silent, and at peace. It is on account of its
Let's pause there.
transparency. Oh, that's where I stop. Okay,
That's it.
I
Those are
just
the
saw that.
stars.
Okay,
Yeah. So let's just be with that for a moment.
okay,
Thank you, Spirit Song.
sure. Hmm. Hmm.
And now let's open it up. Silence is good.
This kind of brings me to what I was experiencing when we were doing the meditation. And I first saw myself as white light. And then the white light went into a fire with dark sparks, like out of a, um, when we have a fire in a pit and the sparks are flying everywhere. And then everything went totally dark. And then I was remembering that experience I had at a meditation where we were to see our soul, and my soul went in a different way. What I witnessed was so different than what I thought, because I flew immediately into being everything and everybody else. And then that brought me back to what I am is this mystery of all of that and none of that. That's something that I try to get my mind around, to get that if I'm understanding it correctly, and maybe I'll learn something different here, but that I am none of it. I am nothing, the black, the nothing. And yet I am you and you and you and you and everything around me at the same time. Is that possible? Are we one or the other? Or are we both at the same time?
I
Yeah,
love those questions, Spirit Song. I'm really feeling you. I'm really with you on those questions and your insights.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think of it as like they both are pointing to the truth, and the truth, they're pointing through the mind. And so they seem like they're opposite, but they're pointing to the truth that we can't really get our mind around. So they're both pointing to, this like, oh, the understanding that's beyond the mind.
Right.
That's my sense.
Yeah, good point. That place that we don't really have words for.
Yeah. And we never will.
No. That's okay.
Yeah. I love how he says our essential self or being shines in each of us as the sense of being myself. I love that sense of shining, and how he often comes back to that, the shining, and like the light of awareness. And often the light can get covered over by experience, right? And then like, oh, we lose that light. But once the realization of the beingness has been made, once the contact with the self that isn't dependent on experience is made, then experience can begin to shine with our beingness as well, rather than covering it over. Then experience is enhanced by the light of awareness. I think I added a T in there for some reason. Yeah, I just love that, the way that he points to that, because like it's like, oh, I've had that experience, but I didn't know how to like talk about it. But just how I just am so grateful for Rupert Spira and the way that he illuminates what's happening. Yeah.
Well, in the world, roles that we have are so much a part of the experience living here on this plane. I am whatever, the roles and identities. So we acquire these, or excuse me, I acquired these as I progressed in life. And I think one really monumental task, I call it a task, was to remain in this awareness that I am not all those roles or identities. I can act them out, like an actor on a stage for the necessity of the interaction on whatever experience I'm having. But then I go back to this place of beautiful safety and surrender of, I fall back into the knowingness of who I am. But in previous existence for me, so much of my life was dependent on those roles.
Yeah.
I derived a lot of validation, and a lot of just everything was based on, and I remember finding something I'd written years ago in my closet when I was moving from Dallas to here, some cardboard thing. It said, I am a teacher. I had all these roles that I was doing for some kind of a breakout session, a job, professional development thing. We were supposed to name all these roles that we are. And you take all this, I took all this pride in, like, oh, so you base your self-worth on all this stuff. So the path is to, I feel like I went up a hill and acquired all these, and now I'm going back down the hill. And I'm letting all of them fall
Keep
away.
the self-worth and let the other part fall away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of cognitive dissonance there for me. It's just, I am all these things, but I'm not really.
Right.
Something comes to mind for me to share in response to what you just said, Caroline, where I just have been really touched recently. This is another system that I'm studying right now is the gene keys. And something that I love so much about the journey that I'm on in that is that the person who developed it, his name is Richard. And he just says that it's such a personal process. And that's what I was reminded of when I was hearing you. And when I think about this experience of each of us, like contemplating this material, it's so personal and private. Here, I mean, we can talk about it and it's lovely to talk about. And it feels really nice to have community to share the inquiry and share the path, but it's so private, like these questions and like what comes up for each of us when we are with these prompts that BJ offers, or just, with the reading, it's so intensely private and it's so difficult to really express, what sense we're making out of it, because everything we can express kind of feels like it comes through thoughts and words and images and concepts, which are all abstractions from the real thing that we're about right now. Anyway, but it's sweet though too, to just give ourselves permission. I guess what I'm really wanting to say is like, I I feel grateful to find in myself the permission. And I really just champion all of us feeling the permission to be in this journey, because it's not a journey that's really, so far, it's not a journey that's really cheer-led by the mainstream culture that we're in, you know? So it's nice to it's nice to just vote for the celebration of like, we've, for one reason or another, we found ourselves in the position where we're able to give that to ourselves. And it feels like a great gift. At least that's how it feels to me. And so I'm just offering that up as if it's useful to anyone else too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Kent. I'd like
Thank
to
you,
move us
Beatrice.
to the next section. Oh yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Good to see you, Kent.
Yeah, you too, Aaron. And Spirit Song, Neil, Carolyn.
Thank you. Good to see you. Welcome.
So Kent, we're on page 24, if you've got the book with you. And
When
I'll
did you
go ahead.
start?
We started at 6:30.
Oh, you started at 6:30. Oh, I thought I
Yes.
started. I see. Okay.
Yeah, we're not far in. We've only read one section.
Okay.
Okay. It is on account of its transparency or emptiness that a screen is able to display innumerable colors. When it is colored by an image, its original transparent nature does not disappear. It is just temporarily qualified by that color. When the color fades away, nothing new happens to the screen. It simply loses a temporary shade, and its natural transparent condition is revealed. Just as the screen seems to acquire the colors it displays, our self seems to acquire the qualities of experience. I am seems to become I am this, or I am that. But just as no color is inherent to the screen, no attribute or quality is intrinsic to our self. When we are divested of the various qualities we acquire from experience, all that remains is naked, aware being. However, our self or being is too close to itself to be known as an objective experience. Just as the eyes cannot see themselves, the eyes can only see something that is at a distance from them, and similarly, our self can only know something at an apparent distance from itself. We cannot separate ourself from ourself in order to know it as an object of experience. At the same time, our own being is not something unknown or unfamiliar to us. In fact, our own being is more intimately known to us than anything else. Our own being is closer to us than our most intimate thoughts and feelings. For this reason, we do not have to go anywhere or do anything special in order to be aware of ourself. If someone were to ask us now to stand up and take a step towards ourself, where would we go? What would we do? Could we go anywhere that would take us closer to ourself? Could we go anywhere that would take us farther away? It is the same with our being. Where do we have to go, or what do we have to do to be aware of our own being? The fact of being aware is not something we can get closer to or farther from. Being aware, or aware being, is what we always are, irrespective of the content of experience. If anything, it could be more accurate to suggest that we cease doing something. That is, cease allowing ourselves to become obscured by the content of experience. Once we have seen that our self or being is not qualified by experience, nothing need be done. It shines by itself. Aaron, your hand is raised.
Mm-hmm.
You want to share something?
Whenever it's time.
Yeah, it's time.
Okay. Well, I've said it before, but I really enjoy the metaphor that he uses of the screen and the movie. Somehow that just really is helpful to me. And when you were reading that, BJ, it also made me think of what it would be like to try to describe space, not air, not like a substance, but just space. You know, you know, somehow there was a parallel to me of like how impossible it is to describe something that has no qualities. And I was forming the metaphor of like, what would it be to try to describe, you know, the space that's behind everything or something? It's like, well, how do you describe something that has no qualities? Anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
That last little sentence that you read, once we've seen that our self or being is not qualified by experience, nothing need be done. It shines by itself. And I remember some line from Muji where he says, when you are effortless, you are at the height of your being. When you know without mind and you see without eyes, you hear without ears. He's always bringing into context for me the understanding of the effortlessness involved, and yet for me it can be difficult to get to that effortlessness. Like there's an effort to get to the effortlessness, but I love how he succinctly puts it. Muji is so beautiful with some of his quotes. I love them all. That you are at the height of your being. I love him. And I like that. I thought of that quote when nothing need be done.
Yeah.
Everything in my experience in Earth school, everything takes some sort of effort. You know, you have to do to get, you have to hustle to be rewarded. It's always about efforting. And this path calls me to be effortless, to be aware of my own being. So it's a continuous
good concept to bring to inquiring together. Everything requires effort.
Yeah. And yet in spirituality, for me, the most important part requires no effort. To be in the height of my being, I'm simply being. So simplicity of it, you know.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about Rupert is just like you're saying, how you appreciate about Muji too, like how he points to actually enlightenment is so simple and easy, like enlightenment being realizing our true nature, that the awareness that I am is already completely peaceful, fulfilled, ever present. And then the path is about realizing that with our lives, living into that, into that realization. And I appreciate how the way that Rupert talks about the spiritual path, like flips, what's a common way of thinking about, like, oh, I'm reaching to attain enlightenment. He's like, no, enlightenment is simple. Just there it is. There's your being. It's ever present. It's fulfilled. See, it's right there. Now live that. Now the journey begins. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah, such a simple term as just be is meaningful to me. I mean, trimming everything else away, just be. And being in the present moment, I had a little bit of mind game going on, I think, I love the the analogy of the screen and different things coming and going. But when we're talking about what I am and what I'm not, there are things such as being a mother that I knew I came here for. And those children came out of me. Now they're not mine. They came through me. And I've always been aware of that. They belong to the universe. They belong to themselves. I've always known that. And yet some of their DNA is in me and some of my DNA is in them. And my experience of being a mother has been the most beautiful experience of my life. So do I identify with it? Is that who I am? I know I'm just me, but I feel I am a mother too. And I was thinking about that screen, and what if all the things that are a part of me in my life were on the screen at the same time? How would I even see anything? I mean, they're all real. I'm a mother. I'm just me, but I'm these other things too in real life. And then the way I solved that in my mind is I saw, okay, well, they're all me on the screen and they're all in their own little cubicle. And so all of you, so can I put all of the thousands of experiences that I've had in little tiny cubicles all over the screen? I don't know. And know that in the great mystery, I am none of that, and yet I am all of that.
Yeah.
I have a little trouble with the screen being inanimate too. I don't think of myself, even when I see myself as the dark nothingness, as inanimate. That's something else I'll have to dance with if it comes to that. I don't know what the teaching is about that.
Yeah.
Are we inanimate? I'm full of questions, aren't I?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Mhm.
What are we
Neil?
supposed to be, avatars or something?
Mhm.
You want to jump in, Neil?
Yeah, and a couple thoughts. So once you attain the ability to just be the screen without any pictures on it, would that be similar to the Christ consciousness or cosmic consciousness of knowing kind of all that there is through that way of coming into yourself? And then from that experience of taking off the pictures on the screen, you would then just be unconditional love. That's all you could be, because you would see everyone else's true nature. Is that kind of the same thing?
I mean, I can share my thoughts about that. I think it's related. I think that the pure awareness that we are is pointing in the direction of Christ consciousness. I don't know for sure, but it seems as though, like for instance, if we look at Ra's telling of know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. I think the awareness with knowing that awareness with nothing on the screen, that's know yourself. And then there's the step of accept yourself. So noticing, okay, well, and all of these things do come onto the screen. So I think the process of accepting, okay, well, it seems as though I'm a mother, and it seems as though I get irritated when my children XYZ, and it seems as though, like then there's clarifying, healing the experience, allowing the light of pure awareness to shine through the experience. Like I think that's part of the journey. And then once we're able to rest as pure being in the midst of experience, I think that's the same as become the creator, which to me is Christ consciousness. That's my take.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I had a similar take on like trying to relate it to Ra and the teachings that they gave from the balancing technique of end of the day, think about everything that you did. And I was like, okay, how can I combine these? I'm at the end of my day.
Yeah.
I will project the screen, and then on the screen is everything that happened during the day. And then I'm watching, okay, where did I feel separate? Like when I went to the grocery store today and I felt separate from everyone and people were looking at me and I was worried that I was going to buy something that someone thought was weird, and like re-going over combining the balancing technique with the layers of the screen and be like, okay, in that moment I was feeling judged, anxious, worried, and also hot and sweaty. So
Yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, how many layers were there? How can I peel them back to the original state that I should have been in that moment?
Mm. Yeah, and then just a comment from my own perspective about like anytime that I notice that I'm not able to stay as the I am in the middle of experience, to me points to belief in identity, and belief is the perfect moment for inquiry, because that's when you can like, oh, okay, this is something that seems to take me away from myself, so let me inquire about it. Okay, everyone's looking at me. Okay, everyone's looking at me. Is it true? And then, take yourself through the process. That's like, anyway, I'm jazzed about that, but that's like, those are the perfect moments if you're interested in that practice to bring that in. Anything else before we read the next section?
Well, I just had a response to Spirit Song's inquiry about, being inanimate.
Yeah.
And, these are, like describing the what is, describing anything about our primal state, our essential selves. I run out of words pretty quick, right? Because it's like, how do you describe that? It's kind of like describing space. But I do think we're inanimate. How could it be any other way? Because if we were moving, where are we moving from? Where are we moving towards? What is it that's moving? There'd have to be some objectiveness to us to be moving, to be animate. And I think that what Rupert's describing as the primal state of pure awareness is not moving; it's perfectly still, and that's metaphysically quite significant, actually, because everything that we can experience is in motion and is animate, and that's the distinction between our true selves and what we experience is motion. So that's my thought about that.
Mm-hmm. And that's so funny, because what that brings up in me is, but no, I am pure nothingness, but I am moving all the time. I am everything. I am everywhere. I'm not a dot. I'm sorry, Lovey. This is just how I'm processing right now. I mean, you, Neil, when you said a dot, yeah, because I have this sense of expandedness, of no limits, when I've done plant spirit medicine, the only really kind of out of body experience that I have has repeated itself. I just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then I'm nothing, but I'm everything. I'm just, I am.
Yeah.
But feels like it's the juxtaposition, or that's not the right word, the odyssey, the mystery. I keep coming back to the mystery of truly being none of it and being all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have to just sigh. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how to explain that, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
part of the journey. I think the mind does want to wrestle with it and grapple with it and get it. And I think
Yeah.
in some ways the mind has to kind of wear itself out, we have to like, oh no, but no, but I'm this, no, but I'm the other, no, but I'm not moving, no, but I am moving, no, but and I think we just kind of have to go through that. I think that's part of, at least the way that I see it, that's part of the accept yourself process. And then at some
To
point the mind surrenders and goes, oh, 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 now I
what
understand.
came to me, a healthy forget it. You know, don't try, forget it. Let it be.
Or keep trying, because then it helps
Or
you wear the mind out.
because you know what? We can't make any mistakes.
Yeah.
It's all perfect. So
Yeah.
mm,
Well, I think let's keep reading. And would anyone be willing to read the next 2 sections? So
Okay.
starting at unqualified. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
Unqualified, unconditioned aware being shines in each of our minds as the knowledge I, or I am. It is the feeling of being, or the sense of being myself, before it has been colored or qualified by experience. Aware being is not something extraordinary or unfamiliar. It is the self in all selves, the being in all beings. It cannot be lost or found, but it can be veiled and then recognized. When John Smith dresses up in King Lear's clothes and adopts his thoughts and feelings, he assumes their qualities and limitations and seems, as a result, to become the character King Lear. As such, King Lear is John Smith, plus an imaginary limitation, although in reality, John Smith is always only John Smith. When King Lear feels I, myself, and I, that he is the I that he is feeling is John Smith, the only I there is. That is, the self of John Smith shines in King Lear's experience as the knowledge I, or I am. It is, in fact, not King Lear who knows himself as I, for the only self or person present in King Lear is John Smith. King Lear's knowledge I is John Smith's knowledge of himself. King Lear's problem is that he does not see himself, John Smith, clearly. Or rather, John Smith's knowledge of himself is so obscured by King Lear's thoughts and feelings that he does not know himself as he is, and thus loses touch with his innate peace and happiness. All King Lear's experience is temporary, finite, and conditioned, apart from one aspect, the pure feeling I. This is the only element of his experience that has nothing to do with the character King Lear. In order to recognize his true nature and taste its inherent peace and happiness, King Lear does not need to explore his thoughts, feelings, activities, and relationships, but simply to go to that pure feeling of I, myself, or the knowledge I am. Likewise, instead of emphasizing the content of experience and allowing our essential self or being to fade into the background, all that is necessary is to allow the content of experience to recede and allow being to emerge. Our self or being, which shines in each of us as the knowledge I am, is the constant factor in all changing experience. If I am depressed, I am present there. If I am lonely, tired, or in love, I am present there. If I am drinking tea or walking down the street, I am present there. Whatever I am thinking, feeling, perceiving, or doing, I am present. Our essential being shines equally in all experience, irrespective of its content. Even our darkest feelings shine brightly with the light of being. All that is necessary is to give attention to being in the midst of experience before it is qualified or conditioned by it. However, we are not one thing and ourself or being another to which we can direct our attention, as we might direct attention to a thought or a perception. We are ourself or being. It is ourself, the simple fact of being aware or awareness itself, that directs its attention away from itself towards the content of experience, thereby ignoring or overlooking itself. And it is ourself that disentangles itself from the content of experience and returns to itself.
Now let's just take a moment. And let's open it up.
I have. And he says that Spira says that our self or being which shines in each of us as the knowledge I am is the constant factor in all changing experience. I'm really curious if anybody's willing to share what, if you can articulate it, what do you feel like when you are being yourself? What does that mean to you? Emotionally or a state of being? How do you know when you're being yourself?
I'll say personally, going through like heavy alcohol drinking and kind of putting that layer onto the screen, I felt similar to myself after stopping drinking. And I could say a feeling, it was like a humor. Like I had very easy, like just being able to joyously joke. So like joyous joking, and just, I was like, I feel like myself. I'm able to just be goofy about everything. I don't know, that's kind of my experience.
Yeah. I can share too, like a simple way of looking at the practice of meditative self-inquiry that I love, the work of Byron Katie. A really simple way of looking at it is looking at what is it like, what is my experience like with a thought, and then what is my experience like without the thought. So if and then compare, being with those two experiences. Okay, here I am with the thought and here I am without the thought, and recognizing the impact of believing something. And to me, that question, like being with those two juxtapositions, has exposed to me, I don't know, maybe even thousands of times. I don't know how many times I've gone through the process now of asking myself with the thought and without the thought. But like being without the thought brings me back to my pure being. And there's almost always just an experience of present. Like I wasn't present before. I was off into some imagination. So present, that's really consistent for me. My heart feels more open. I'm connected. I'm grateful, usually. I'm often actually aware of the light of the sun. Like I'm aware without a concept. I'm aware of the light coming in, through the window. Even if I don't see the sun, directly, it's like, oh yeah, oh, there it is. without the thought. So those are some pretty consistent qualities that come in for me.
Thank you.
I like that question. What do you notice, if anything, Caroline?
I really mesmerized by the word authenticity. So who is Caroline when she, or who is the I am presence when she's being authentic? For me, it's a lot of freedom to just show up in the world as who I am without fear of judgment or ridicule or shame or all those low states.
Yeah.
That I feel like I am in my sovereignty and my power. And I think authenticity for me is the feeling of being myself. It's been a life journey of finding out, who am I? You know, that was the initial question when I got a massive download 4 years ago. I was like, who am I? But I didn't know what authenticity meant. So for me, that is as close as I can get to the feeling of being myself. No mask, just I lived in so much fear for so long of being judged or criticized or whatever, low feelings of self-worth. So feeling authentically in love with life and who I am, regardless of the circumstances, is freedom. And being myself.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
I was resonating with what Neil said too about the playful spirit. When we can get into our child inside, or even a memory of happy time as a child when we were playing and we were not being judged, we were out somewhere just free or with other children, that sense of freedom, laughter, play erases everything else that would be thought programs, I think. You know what I'm saying? There's no existence in the moment except in that playful, joyful, kind of mindless experience of doing whatever comes next.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said, Caroline.
Thank you.
I really resonated with what PJ was saying about being present and feeling connected, being present in the moment and feeling connected to my environment and to people around me. Those are things that I feel when I feel most myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I feel centered, because I don't always feel centered. But when I do have the feeling of centeredness, is when I feel most myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts, Aaron?
I do. I read before this book, I read another one of Rupert's books. It's called "You Are the Happiness You Seek." And he talks about peace and happiness are the best words he's found to describe the nature of the emotional quality, or the sort of essential quality of when we're in connection with our being. And you know, in some ways it feels like an oversimplification, but I don't think I can do any better than that. It feels true to me too. Peace and freedom. You said freedom, right? Spirit Song, I think you said freedom. Peace and freedom to me feel very similar concepts. Like, to me, I feel the most peaceful when I feel free, or I feel free when I feel peaceful, or something. They're connected. There's lots of ways you can clothe them in words, but yeah, it's simple. If there's a simple, when I feel really self-connected and it's seated in my essential nature, it's very simple.
Yeah, good word. I like that.
Right. Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I experienced that simpleness as well as the freedom, being like intelligence that is freed up. Like the intelligence is just available to do what makes sense, as opposed to, like, for instance, I think a lot of the what we cover ourselves with is like rules, it's like, is one way of looking at it. Like, I'm this, and this is the thing that to do that's helpful, and and don't do that, or it, like, all of this sort of thought constructs we take on because we think they're helpful, and so we take them on innocently, and but then it does limit our freedom. Like, I have to see it through this lens and filter it this way, just like, oh, now there's only this way to do it. Yeah, and I think that one of the associations I have with that simplicity is like, it's just intelligence that's available to act and move without the filter of mind, which to me, that connects to the revelation that I shared in the beginning of like, oh, I'm still there when mind is still, and that I that's still there is intelligent, and that's like huge. That, like, I think a lot of times we're afraid of the mind becoming more still, or, losing some of its job in our lives, because then I'll just be like a numbskull, and I'll just be like brain dead, but actually what happens is intelligence, as opposed to just rule book or something like that.
A calculator.
Yeah.
Instead of a calculator.
I think the more simple I make this journey for myself, the more space I have to rest in this freedom. Because, like you say, the rules and the constrictions of the environment, the society, the culture we live in, it takes up so much room. It's like this I look at it as a very busy street. And when I start taking these things off the road and the street becomes quieter and there's less traffic, it's all about this limitless open space. And it's like, the more I taste that, the more I want to be there in the quietness of that. And I can do that in public. I can do that in private. Be the one who stands still and be the changeless one in all the changefulness, I think is how Muji puts it, or be the quiet one in all the noise. But it's amazing to me that the less content I'm feeding up here, the more space I have to really enjoy the experience of the experiences.
Yeah. And then to me, that brings us back to what Spirit Song was sharing earlier about like, I'm nothing, I'm everything, well, I'm still interested in being a mother, and I think, like, again, like, once the being shines, then add on mother, and motherhood just shines, it doesn't cover over and hide the beingness anymore. It's like mother, like, ah.
Yeah, because to my children, I am pure love. So I don't think they don't see me, Spirit Song, me, Mary O'Shannon. They feel the essence of me, which is not me, but yes, me. You know?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about, everybody's mentioned freedom, and BJ, when you were talking, I was thinking, if in those moments that I've ever felt like I've lost myself, where did I go? What happened? I'm paralyzed. So just the opposite of what it feels like to be myself, free, playful, light, peace, love, joy. And then I was thinking, but that paralyzation is actually a gift because it means stop. You fell off the track, pause. Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to read again. And I think it would make sense to read 2 sections again. If anybody's
I
up
can do
for
it.
Yeah, great.
I will. If someone were to ask us to be aware of the sound of the wind or traffic, the sensation at the soles of our feet, or the view from our window, we would direct our attention toward each of these. But if someone were to suggest being aware of ourself, what would we do with our attention? The word attention comes from 2 Latin words, ad, meaning to or towards, and tendere, meaning to stretch. Just as the sun shines its light on the earth but cannot shine it on itself because it is too close to itself, so we can focus on or stretch our attention towards an object of experience. We cannot do the same towards ourself. There is no distance and therefore no pathway from ourself to ourself. If anything, all that's required is to relax the focus of attention from its objective content and allow it to flow back to its source. Our self lies at the source of attention. It can never be its object. It is by resting or relaxing our attention that the recognition of ourself is accomplished, never by directing or disciplining it. We cannot become what we are. We cannot be what we are not. Therefore, in this approach, meditation is not considered an activity that is undertaken by the mind. It is the very nature of ourself. Meditation is what we are, not what we do. The simple fact of being shines in each of us as the knowledge I or I am. All that is necessary is to turn towards it, and it will take us into itself. In the Old Testament, God appeared to Moses in the burning bush, and when Moses asked him who he was, God is said to have replied, I am that I am. I am the awareness that is aware that I am. It is a simple and profound statement of our essential identity. And in case Moses's words seem enigmatic, Popeye expressed the same understanding. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. He realized that his essential being shares none of the qualities of experience, but remains intact throughout all changing experience, unmodified, unfragmented, and unqualified. If properly understood, these statements convey the essential truth at the heart of all the great religious and spiritual traditions and indicate where the peace and happiness for which we long, above all else, to be found. It is only the extent to which the knowledge of ourself is veiled by the content of experience that accounts for the varying degrees of peace and happiness we feel. Being is not something that some people have more of than others, nor does anyone have privileged access to it. The unqualified, unconditioned, aware being that shone clearly in Moses, the Buddha, Jesus, Meister Eckhart, Ramana Maharshi, and many others as the knowledge I or I am. The feeling of being, or simply the sense of being myself, is exactly the same aware being that shines presently in each of us. The only difference is that their essential being was not eclipsed by the content of experience. Experience had lost its capacity, to take them away from themselves. Did you want me to read that last section? Oh, there was
No,
one
let's-
more. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's pause there.
Okay. All right.
A question about the higher self and where the higher self kind of plays into this, because it's outside of every experience in the state of unity. So are you aligning directly with your higher self? And that, like, is Eckhart Tolle, you like his thoughts now are his higher self's thoughts? Like, is that kind of the same thing as the I am, or am I making any sense?
I wouldn't think so, just from what I hear from Ra. I think what I get from Ra is that the higher self sort of catalogs all of the experiences of a being before it merges back. So I think it does seem as though living this way puts us more in touch with the higher self, but it doesn't seem to me to equate. But I don't, that's my take.
I could be completely wrong here, but I've always thought of my higher self as future me, directing me in the past to live in the moment right here, right now. But it's actually an incarnation of me, linearly speaking, in the future. My higher self is, I mean, we're in a holographic experience here. So it's all happening simultaneously. But it's sort of like the incarnation of who I am in a higher density, guiding me through meditative experience or inquiry. Because that which is higher self has already had this life, has already experienced this life in this incarnation to completion. So to me, it's my true north, you know. I could be wrong. That's the way I see higher self.
Sounds like the higher self then is guiding you towards this material, trying to find the I am, which it somehow attained and knows about.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
So I've had incarnations that are past, you know, this one. I know it's not linear. It's hard to put it into terms that are sound correct, but I just think of it as it's future me guiding me toward, you know, I call it going up my crystalline staircase to oneness. But it knows the path. It's already had this experience. So it's like I'm trying to tap into the resonance and the frequency of that which knows what is here now. That's my version.
Karen.
Yeah, I resonate with all those comments. I would agree. My take, I think it's a great question, by the way. I think it's a really rich question. I think that there's a lot to be gained in contemplating that. And I think that the higher self is, I agree. I think it's a future part of ourselves. And by future, it's just like it's further along the journey to merging back into truth, back into God, back into oneness. But it's still seeking. It's still a created being. And I think our essential nature isn't created. I think what with this I am presence or aware being is BJ and I talk about this. I think it's synonymous with consciousness. And Ra says consciousness is the microcosm of the law of one. Like consciousness is uncreated. Consciousness is that portion of the creator that witnesses it all, or something. Like it doesn't actually, it never gets created. It never gets caught up in the illusion of creation. And that's what we're pointing to here, is that that faculty. And so it's it isn't an entity at all. It's not created, I think.
Yeah, that, and to me that points back to something else that Spirit Song was talking about earlier, about like when you look at your experience of self, Spirit Song, like especially in a ceremonial journey moment, like there's no edges, there's no boundaries, it's everything. And that's something that Rupert talks about too, and other teachers, but like that's one of the sort of pointers that we can have, like if we look for the edge of my experience of self, like there isn't one. And if you're also looking for the edge of the experience of yourself and there isn't one, and you're also looking for the edge of the experience of yourself and there isn't one, then like how many unlimited selves can there be? Well, there can only really be one, because otherwise, if there's more than one, then our edges would have to hit at some point, like that would have to be like where I end and you begin, because or otherwise, no, there's just one unlimited being, if you just kind of follow logic that way. Yeah. I like that thought process of finding oneness through like, oh yeah, there's no edge to me, and there's no edge to you, and there's no edge to you. So
what came to me when Aaron was talking too, and in this process, in this moment, I mean, our perceptions can change all the time, but when you're talking about who is my higher self, what came to me is the non-judgmental, loving watcher, watching it all, like the mother watches her toddler in the yard, and if I need help, there's help there, but it's not interfering. My higher self is not there to interfere, but to be present with me and help me find the truest me.
yeah.
That's kind of what came to me. Yeah. Or the me that isn't.
Yeah. Well, I think let's read the last section and then discuss. Anybody care to read?
Can read again.
Right.
Unless somebody else ready to?
I didn't see anyone. I think it's you.
Divested of the qualities it derives from experience, ourself is without personal characteristics or attributes, for all such traits are derived from personal experience. Our essential self is thus impersonal, and yet it is utterly intimate. It both transcends experience and is immanent within it. There is no aspect of experience that is not pervaded by the sense of ourself or being. At the same time, our self or being does not share the limits of destiny of anything that takes place in experience. In just the same way, the space in a room pervades the room, but is not limited to or contained by it. The space is unlimited. Our being is likewise infinite. It is not, in fact, our being, but simply being. For being is not the attribute of a person, any more than space is the property of a room. The being that shines in each of our minds as I or I am is not a personal being or self. It is the single, infinite, indivisible, impersonal being, refracted into numerous apparent selves without ever becoming fragmented. We all share the same being. In religious terms, this single, infinite, indivisible, impersonal being is said to be sacred, for it shares none of the limited, is that right? Limited qualities of human experience, although it is the very essence of a human being. All the qualities we most admire in a human being are those that are an expression of the nature of our essential self or being. I can read that again because I messed it up. All the qualities we most admire in a human being are those that are an expression of the nature of our essential self or being. It is the divine in us that makes us truly human. Wow. Mm.
I have
Well,
a couple
let's
thoughts
open
here.
it up. Yeah.
First, I like the word impersonal, and it reminded me of the Joseph Benner, The Impersonal Life. I don't know if anyone's read that, but it goes into detail about this kind of impersonal way of living and just being that infinite source. But then I get to think about our culture, like it really is us. That is what we are. But the moment that we're born, the culture is just separate, separate, separate. So we have to just fight to like get to this easy final end knowing goal of just being. And I guess it's the way that like third density and especially the go into the influence of like Orion type beings and just how do we get so far from this teaching and so just caught up in everything but this really. So it's crazy to think how far we've pushed ourselves away from just being.
Yeah. I think that's we kind of test the limits of how much we can push ourselves, because that like in some ways that's like a celebration of freedom. Look how free I am to get to experience something that's so different than what I actually am.
Well, living in a very materialistic society, freedom is seen by many as financial. I have money, I'm free. Or maybe health, that might come somewhere in the top 5, but I don't know. I just feel like the life that I've seen here has been so much emphasis on material and distractions and the whole thing about I've got to make more, and just I've become very compassionate to people that feel like they have to keep putting themselves through the grinder because I got to work 80 hours a week. I got to make more money. It's just this whole hustle and grind. And I don't know, it hurts my heart when I'm with somebody that sees life that way. I'm like trying to hold space for somebody who that's the game of life. It's to make more money.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to see a different way.
Yeah.
But not many of us. I feel like, I'm grateful for this space. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're almost at time, but I just want to, anybody who has a final thought, just want to make sure there's space.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm feeling so in love with all of you. and this thing we're doing and the freedom we have to explore and all the things that my heart is just overflowing with, and I'm grateful to each of you for your uniqueness,
Yeah.
for the way you bring your thoughts forward so that we all can experience them, and for receiving and accepting me as I am, that I am. And I love you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I receive that. I
Yeah.
give that back.
Mhm.
Any closing comments from you, Kent or Aaron? Oh, a heart from Kent. I'll take it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just saying that I'm glad I caught the end of this. And it just feels, I feel the high vibration of the group. And I'm just enjoying being present for it without necessarily contributing much in what I'm saying, but
Mhm.
I'm enjoying the energy very much. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank
Final
you,
words,
BJ.
Aaron?
Just thank you so much. Thanks for doing this, bringing us
Yes,
together this way. Appreciate you.
Yes,
we do indeed.
I second. Yeah. Thank you. Mhm.
Mhm.
You're welcome. Thank you too. Mwah.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Love you all. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.